Hello, this is Robert Rickover at Body Learning, and today my guest is Petra Pashali, who is training to become an Alexander Technique teacher. She's in her second year on an Alexander Technique training course in Berlin. She has a degree in international business management, and she used to work on recruiting projects, searching and selecting the best candidate for diverse companies, from startups to international corporations. She lives with her husband and three kids in Berlin. Petra, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert.
Well, I wonder if before our topic today is going to be advice for people who are considering training to become Alexander teachers. And I think it would be helpful for anyone listening who's in that position to just first hear a little bit about how it is that you came to make that kind of decision. Um, what was it that brought you to the technique in the first place?
Yeah, sure. I can tell you a little bit about it. I'm the typical back pain candidate.
Hmm.
So my back pain has accompanied me through my life, especially then when I had to sit more in front of the computer when working. It was always a topic. So I tried different things, and in former times, usually sports and gymnastics or Pilates or so
Hmm.
helped.
Right.
Then at a certain point, I discovered that also some Feldenkrais, which is also a kind of mind body work, helps.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was always that sports was my thing, to relax, to build, also to get stress away and to manage my back pain. But at a certain point, and I think it was 2013, I I had the impression that it got worse and it was not manageable by these normal remedies anymore. So
Hmm.
sports didn't really help. It got worse. I couldn't run any longer, although running always was my favorite. And so I had to start swimming, although I'm not such a swim type. But okay, swimming helped a little bit. But yeah, so that was when the voyage started to go to, what do you call them in English? The orthopedics or the or
Orthopedics, yeah. Uh-huh.
orthopedics and physiotherapists,
Hmm.
and yeah, discovering that nobody actually really knew what's going on in my body, because it was not only the back, but it was really half my side in a way. The whole body from neck to foot suddenly was somehow very tense, my whole left side.
Hmm.
And I didn't get any help any longer, and I started reading about it. Started discovering different things. So I also built up some knowledge, and I discovered when I talked to physiotherapists that they were actually a bit frightened, or they didn't really know what to do with me. So
Right, right.
I had the impression I really want to learn something to be able to manage myself, to help
Hmm.
myself.
Hmm.
And that was when I discovered the Alexander technique, where I had read about it in a book that my mother had given to me. And there were a lot of different techniques mentioned in that book. And one of them was the Alexander technique. And well, I had tried Feldenkrais, and Alexander technique was somehow the next I wanted to try. And that
Right.
was the first lessons that I took here in Berlin with the teacher.
Hmm.
And I somehow stuck with it, and my interest grew, and I wanted to learn more about it.
And so the decision to sign on to a training course, was that primarily as a way of getting more Alexander experience?
Yes, primarily
Yes.
that was
Hmm.
the reason why I signed in, why I
Yeah.
decided to do the training course. But it was always an option, like to say, okay, I like training others as well. I've done it in my job quite a lot. I
Right.
like teaching. And I've always in the past thought, teaching would be nice, but what should I teach? And now it's actually coming together that
Oh,
I
that's
really enjoy
that's
teaching and
oh,
and
that's
helping myself.
wonderful.
But
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
passing on this knowledge now to others
Right.
will be really nice, or is already nice if we have guests, and I can start to work a little bit with the guests.
Right. So a decision for anybody to sign on to or to sign on to an Alexander Technique training course is a pretty big one to make. We were usually talking about 3 years and pretty intense study and often a lot of money. So I think for a lot of people, they might wonder, well, how would I decide what course to go to? There are several dozen around the world. I don't know the exact number, but quite a few. And if someone were to ask you, Petra, which course should I go on? What would you tell them?
Well, I actually investigated primarily in Berlin because I knew I wanted to live here with my family, or we live here, and I needed a course which allows me to spend holidays with my family. So our course is scheduled in a way that we have class from Monday to Thursday in the morning from 9 to 12:30, and we have it throughout the year on a continuous basis. And the school holidays, like the official German school holidays, they are off for us as well.
Oh, okay.
There are other schools here in Berlin that teach, for example, 6 weeks, I think, in a row, more intensive, like full days. And then you have some time off again. And then this 6-week schedule starts again. And it depends, I think, which circumstances, what your life looks like, which training course is more suitable.
And whether you're prepared to move to a different city, because typically, Alexander training courses are only available in a relatively small number of large cities, and some smaller ones as well. But there's every possibility that you might have had Alexander lessons in a location where there is no training course nearby.
That's true. And then you should investigate prices of the schools and the cost of living in these cities, because that varies quite a lot. And I think actually Berlin, if you look at that, at these numbers and the offering we have here, is quite a good place to go to an Alexander Technique school.
But of course, you also want to, you may need to work part-time. While you're on the train, do you work while you're on the training course in the afternoons?
Yes, I do some projects, but for our own company and at my own pace, let's say. So I still accompany some clients, but not in the amount that I did before. It was really the decision to concentrate on the training course and to be available for the children in the afternoon.
Right.
And do a little bit of recruiting projects, but not primarily. So that was a big decision, and I had to get my husband on board, the whole family on board, to say, okay, this is something I want to do, and is that okay for you? That was really important.
Right. So in one way, of course, you had the added obligation of 3 children to look after, but you also, it sounds like you had connections with the corporation you'd been working for that would enable you to do some part-time work.
Yes.
And not everyone would have that. That might be a little bit unusual.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, we have also diverse people in our group. Like, we are a group of about 10 people, and some are actors, some are musicians, some dancers. One is a programmer working in Cyprus, and she was with us now for a year. Now she goes back to work there, but she will come back for 1 week a month now for the following months to see how she can figure all out. Perhaps she can even start working from Berlin for the same company that she used to work for in Cyprus. We have one from Japan. He's a musician, and he plays here in Berlin for the Deutsche Oper, so for the opera. He's doing the Alexander Technique training, he's learning German, and is performing. So he has really a full day. Others are singers and sing in the evening and teach. They teach singing or voice, what do you call it? Voice work, presenting.
Oh, lessons? Oh,
like lessons, yeah,
lessons,
lessons how
right. Yeah.
to speak and so on. So
Hmm.
actually, I think everybody is working in a way part time and doing the training. And we are from diverse countries, so it's very international. We speak in English during our training. I
Oh,
think
really?
I'm the only one who isn't even German. I'm Austrian,
Oh,
and
uh-huh.
or there's another one who is from Germany, but the rest is really from different countries like Slovenia, Japan, Cyprus, Greece,
Hmm.
yeah, France, America. We even have one from the US.
Oh, excellent. So let's say that someone has um, sort of zeroed in on two or three training courses that would be possible for them to attend. Um, I would assume that if at all possible, you would suggest they visit them all for a
Yes,
few days each and just
definitely.
spend some
Yeah.
time on the course, make sure you're comfortable with the instructors and with the students and the general atmosphere, right?
Yeah, right. Definitely. I think that's a big advantage that you can always spend days as a guest at our school or at other schools as well
Hmm.
to, yeah, get in touch with who is there and how is also what's the location like?
Hmm.
Is it a big room? Is it a nice atmosphere? Um, how structured is the training course? Um,
Right, right.
that's also quite a difference, I think, often.
And I think another thing to consider is that in the Alexander world, there are different styles of teaching, sort of different lineages from the people who took up Alexander's work after he died. And it could be that it might be very advantageous in some cases to go to a course that comes from a different lineage than the one you've had experience in. You know,
Yeah, if you
that's a
know which one you have experience in.
well, that's
I didn't
true.
know
Yeah,
which course my teacher at that time had done.
right.
Well, at our school, it's a mix. Also, some say it's a mix of, like you say, Carrington and McDonald. These two
Those are two of the
basically.
major
But,
strands. Yeah. Although
yeah,
I don't know today, it's so far down the line that they're probably more substrands than I have any idea about. But certainly, when I trained in England back in the day, there were like basically three or four quite distinct training courses, not just in terms of personalities, but in terms of sort of Alexander lineages attached to them. So
yeah.
that's something to consider as well. Any thoughts on other aspects that someone considering taking this giant step should think about?
Hmm. Well, we had the cost. We had the people, the style,
Hmm.
the city where to live in.
Right.
Um, No, I think just going there and trying, like you say, being part of the group for a day or even for several days makes a lot of sense. I did that as well. Before I started the training, I went once a week, for example, to that school
Hmm.
for like about 8 weeks, just
Oh,
to get a
yeah.
feel for now
Hmm.
how it would be to do it more intensively, to see also whether this kind of work really is what I want to do for 3 years, because I didn't know.
You're right. There's no
It
way,
seems like a long
really.
time, like you say.
Well, I guess there's really no way to know for sure without spending time on the course. And what is it like to be immersed in the Alexander technique for 3 or 3.5 hours a day? That's quite an intense process. And
Yes.
not everyone who's had Alexander lessons would have any idea of what that's like if they've just had half hour or 45-minute lessons once or twice a week. It's a big change going on a training course. So I guess I
Hmm.
would add that if at all possible, spend as much time as you can investigating all the courses that are possible. Um, I mean, you were very lucky that you were in the same city as some, a number of options, but not everyone would be that lucky, and so you may have to make a commitment to do a bit of traveling and staying places for
Yeah,
a few days at a time.
yeah.
Anything else you want to say about maybe
Well, what I just
yeah.
thought of,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Yeah.
was to say, okay, this also look at the contract. Like, would it allow you to have breaks if you're, for example, a freelancer or an artist? Yeah, you might get a project where you really have to be away for 3 months. Is that possible with that kind of school? To
Hmm.
talk to the head of the school
Oh,
and to
that's a
say
good
whether these
point.
forces not taking a break is possible, or even like how long are you bound to the contract? When can you give notice if you really suddenly become aware this is not working for me? Like, am I now, have I ever got to pay for a whole year, although I
Oh,
don't want to even finish
right.
the year? Or
That's a
what are the
that's
conditions?
a very good point, and I don't know anything about what training courses these days typically do require in that way. So yes, I think you'd do well to spend a bit of time with the director or directors on that very topic, because it's quite possible something could come up and that you would have to take time off. I think that, I mean, normally the Alexander training process is classically it's a 3 year commitment, but a lot of people I know have taken longer because they've taken more time off along the way. So it's definitely possible.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
In our school as well, there's
right,
often people in total they have more time than these 3 years and 3 months.
right.
But that's totally possible. Yeah.
And I should say that in America and possibly elsewhere, but certainly in America, there are other kinds of training options that are not necessarily that are more provide more flexibility for people. Things like trainings over weekends and maybe one day of the week, that kind of thing. So you might want
Hmm.
to look into that as well. And I suppose it's also we should talk about a little bit about the nature of Alexander Technique certification. Um, I assume that is it the case that your training course is one that's kind of ultimately affiliated with STAT and that in that whole network of STAT and AMSTAT and so on?
Well, it's affiliated definitely with the German Alexander Technikverband,
Right.
which might be affiliated again with START. I'm not sure, but
Probably. It's probably
yeah.
is. If it's the main one in Germany, is
Yeah,
that
that's the
yeah.
main one. Yeah, the
But
main organization. So the school is also regularly visited by another kind of supervisor who checks
right,
out that
right,
everything's going well according to Alexander Technique at
right,
the school. So to make sure there is a certain understanding, certain progression also on our side.
right. So again, in America, and I think in England these days too, and in I don't really know I don't know enough to say about other countries, but there more than one certifying network. Let's put it that way. In America, there's something called ATI, and I think ATI exists in other countries as well. So there are different training courses will kind of take you on the path to certification of a particular type, and there are different types. So that's something to make sure you're aware of. Um, on the other
And the
hand,
time spent is normally the same. Like you
not
spend
necess-
these.
apparently,
No.
as far as I know, not necessarily. So that's something to consider. Um, and just, I guess another thing to consider is that legally in most countries, certainly in America, there is no requirement to be a member of any society. I mean, really anyone can call themselves an Alexander Technique teacher, and there's no legal recourse. So that's kind of the situation.
Mm.
It's not a totally monolithic. The Alexander Technique is not totally monolithic. Let's put it that way. So
Mm.
it would be definitely good to be very clear if you're looking at a training course what kind of network it's in, if it is in a network, because that would have a bit of a bearing on the kind of certificate you would get at the end. So
Mm.
anyway, is there anything else that you'd like to add? I think we've covered most of the basics.
Yes, I think so too.
So my guest today has been Petra Pashley. That's as close as I can come to the real pronunciation. And she is on a training course in Berlin. She's hoping to finish at the end of 2020. Petra, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you, Robert.